Smart drugs are supposed to make you smarter, right? And make you do better on tests? That's the story I've been told since high school, when you'd see the little corner of your cafeteria where trades were being made start to pick up during midterm and final exam season. But do things like Addie and Rit actually help people take tests? Well, a recent study looked to specifically examine that. So we've heard this idea that smart drugs are cognitive enhancement drugs, like things like modafinil, but also off-label use of ADHD meds like Addie and Rit, that those might actually help with things like academic performance. But here's the thing, academic performance can mean like all sorts of things. And we see that things like RIT can help with, working memory. So like how many numbers you can kind of move around in your head at any period of time. But is that, when you actually get down to it, helping with how you perform on a test? Is that going to make your test score better? So the scientists were like, no, let's actually figure this out for once and for all. So they ran a study, so this was done in the Netherlands, where they just gave undergraduate students either RIT, a specific dose, before learning the material or before taking the test, to see what the actual effects of Ritalin were on things like test performance. Side note, it is wild to me that they were actually able to give them RIT in this study, because that's not commonly a thing that we can do. It's not like we're like, hey, undergraduates, go ahead and take this prescribed stimulant that has very similar effects to other stimulants like amphetamines, so like speed and meth and blow. Now, side note, similar effects, they are not identical. I am not saying those are the same drugs. They gave this to obscenely healthy undergraduate students. So these are students who had zero psychiatric disorders, zero prescriptions other than birth control that they were on. They did not use excessive drugs, so they did not drink alcohol more than 20 drinks per week. Like, these were like prime specimens of health. So they split them into 3 different groups. So group 1 got no Ritalin ever. Group 2 got Ritalin only while they were learning the material. So that's the encoding phase. So that's like while you're actually studying is something like Ritalin helping you. And then the third group got RIT during the final testing stage. So they got it right before they took the test. So would this drug potentially help with just your ability to take a test or not? And these are very different parts of memory. So like when we are learning something, we need to first pay attention to learning something. So if you're in class and you're daydreaming, you're never going to remember the information because it's never being put into your memory in the first place. And then you have the retrieval side of things. So it's in there, but how do you get it out? And both of these are required for good test taking. So you both need to have learned the material in the first place, but then also need to take it back from your brain at the exact moment that you need to. And you've probably known people who are bad at either version. So just struggle with actually learning the material, or have maybe like test anxiety. So once you get to the test, it all goes away from your brain. That's that second part. I feel like I should do a video now on like how to best take tests, but I'm doing this video today because my students are taking their finals today. Which, side note, if any of you are my current students, don't at me because you already have your test grades and you're good. I can make my TikTok now. Anyways, back to the specific study. So in this study, they had healthy undergraduates that they then put on RIT and asked them to learn material about 4 different subjects. So we have cross-cultural communication, we have alcohol's effects on sleep, we also have Viking settlements in Norse society, and then finally something about like military things in World War II. They gave them RIT during the learning phase or during the remembering phase, and then looked to see what their test performance was like. And then they asked them like multiple choice as well as short answer questions. Some of the multiple choice questions were like, which year did German U-boat operations reach American coastal waters? Do you know how many times I had to re-record that because I couldn't even remember the question? It was a decently hard test. So 55% was passing for this, and they found that out of 25 people, 10 passed and 15 failed. And then in kind of patronizing science language, they were like, yeah, there was sufficient room for improving exam performance. Like, yeah, everyone kind of did terribly at this. I'm getting into the nitty-gritty details of this test because it's actually really important for understanding the results of the study. And the results of the study are basically that RIT did nothing. So RIT did not help with the actual encoding. So it did not help get the information into your memory in the first place. And it also did not help with retrieval. So it did not help them take the information from their brain and be able to put it on a test. There are many different reasons why this lack of effect of Ritalin might be seen. So first, it could be that RIT just doesn't work. So that is a completely valid reason. The second is that RIT doesn't work on this specific type of test. So notice that they're asking a lot of these kind of multiple choice questions that are like, what year, or like what specific things. Those are more types of like semantic memory. So it's memory of like facts. And when I test, I rarely test about just like statistics and things. I test about concepts. So maybe RIT does not help with like the kind of basic understanding of things, like your ability to remember who was the 22nd president. But maybe it could help with things like concepts, like how neurotransmission works, for example. So RIT does help with things like episodic memory. So those are things like what you wore to prom, or the memory of your first kiss. So it's good with like the autobiographical memory, but maybe not so much with like the facts. This is kind of seen in the other literature too. So there's a lot of studies looking at like children's academic performance when they're on ADHD meds. And what they specifically see that it helps with things like processing speed. So it helps them be faster at like those genuinely horrific like speed math questions that you have, like 9 times 9, 9 times 8, 9 times 7. Like you have to just go through them. They are faster at that. And they're actually a little bit more accurate at the math side of things, but they're not actually more accurate at things like reading. You read more quickly, but there's no difference in comprehension. And I'm super curious about that expectation effect. Like, are students who take RIT off label for things like test taking, is that going to make them feel better? And is that confidence going to like decrease their level of test anxiety, which might actually make them better taking the test? So they're placeboing their way into a better test grade, but with stimulants. So the moral of the story from the scientists here was that, see guys, RIT does not help with test taking, so stop using it for that. Which is a perfectly valid thing for scientists to say. But I think there's actually more to this question. I think we need to do much more research on this in terms of like semantic versus episodic memory, expectations. Like we need to look into this more because a lot of people are taking this. They say 4 to 8% of people are using RIT and ADDIE off label to actually just help with their tests, and I think it's more. But like, don't take this as a reason to then be like, I'm gonna run my own experiments, see? Asking for the real good science here, so feel free to volunteer in these studies as they come about, but don't try to do it yourself.